Okay, we're live. Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today, we're going to be giving our review on War for the Planet of the Apes, which is the third in the entry of the new rebooted Planet of the Apes franchise, directed by Matt Reeves. So this one is one that we've been looking forward to for quite some time. I think from our thoughts based on the trailers, I think we knew that this film was going to be something special. And it absolutely was. But before we get into our review for that, we need to talk a little bit about the previous two that came out. So for me, Rise of the Planet of the Apes was one of the biggest surprises that I think I've ever seen at the movie theater. Like, I didn't really know what to make of it. I thought, oh, okay, we've got this new Planet of the Apes film coming out. It's all CGI now, and the Serkis involved, so I was kind of interested from that. And I absolutely loved it. I think it's a solid watch. And now that we've got the three to talk about, I mean, this is a trilogy now. When you look back at the previous two, especially Rise, that's the most summer blockbustery one out of them all, I think. And then Dawn came out, and we've talked about Dawn before. Actually, we have reviews out for Rise and Dawn. It's like really, really old school when we did our old version of Film Club. So if someone's really curious, do a bit of searching on our channel. You can find those out. Dawn took everything that was established in Rise and did what a great sequel has to do. It upped the stakes. It made the tone darker, went deeper into the characters. And I think it was from Dawn where they really nailed the tone. And that's about all I can say right now before getting into War for the Planet of the Apes. So what are your thoughts on the Planet of the Apes franchise?
I loved them. So as a kid, I had the VHS of not the Charlton Heston one, sorry, the Tim Burton one. Yes, surprise, surprise. And, it was before I knew who Marky Mark was. It was before the time of Transformers. It was just an odd film, I remember as a kid. It was really weird. It was really creepy. That's what I remember it being. And then, obviously, fast forward 2011, when this film came out, it was such an odd one. This is at a point where I think I was still at school. I was really excited for this film. I've seen all the trailers for it, just as they've been coming online. This is when I was starting to really get into film, and I thought this looked really, really good. I think the music from the trailers is one of my most played songs on my iTunes, which was a stunning piano song. I can't remember the name of it, but Rise Dates I thought looked great, and it surprised me how much better it was than I thought it would be. And exactly what you said, Andy Serkis' attachment to it, that sold it. Not just for me, but for a lot of people. I guess it's the most iconic behind the scenes video, which is when he's banging on the walls, and they always shift between ape, Serkis, ape. That's the way they've always done it for these films, and to this day, I still believe he should have been nominated for Best Supporting or Lead Actor for that film. So Rise was not a surprise. It wasn't a surprise, but it looked stunning, and I was shocked how great it was. Mm-hmm. Then you get Dawn, and Dawn blew my mind. It's one of the best blockbusters I've ever seen. I think I put it second as my film of the year that year, behind Interstellar. It was everything a sequel should be. It raised the stake. It developed the characters. It did everything right. And I've said this to other people. Andy Serkis was out mocapped, if that's even a phrase. I personally think that, oh God, I've forgotten his name. The one that played Cobra, he was fantastic. Toby Kebbell, yeah. I thought he was phenomenal in that. And Dawn was, a stunning film in itself that can be released any time of the year, and it was great. So I've been on the hype train for War for a very, very long time. I guess since the final scene of Dawn, I've been waiting for this. And the trailers have looked solid. The casting looks... Sorry, but the casting is at perfection with Woody Harrelson. Sorry, I was tired then. I didn't mean to yawn. And all the boxes were being ticked. Giacchino's back. Kubritzka said, we've got 2 Giacchino soundtracks coming out in the space of 6 days. My gosh, the second one is actually a good soundtrack. War for the Planet of the Apes, long title, but what I will say straight up is this is arguably one of the best trilogies of this century so far. This will be a trilogy that people speak of in the future, like Lord of the Rings, like Star Wars, and many others. I guess it's been amazing to have witnessed all 3 at a cinema. When I think of great trilogies, I know I'm not that young, but I'm 21 now. So what has there been that's been this sort of, Toy Story doesn't really count. I wasn't even born when the first come on. Things like I feel like I've had my first. I was late to the party. I saw Dark Knight before Batman Begins, stuff like that. But
yeah,
I've got such a vivid memory of all 3 of these, following production of all 3 of these, that I'm like when I came out of screen yesterday, I said it's honestly one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And it was precisely that.
And it's good because I think it's like a 3-year gap between each of the films that have come out, right? So when they come out, they feel earned. It feels like you have had that time away from the character, as the characters actually have in the actual narrative of the timeline as well. So yeah, I was absolutely incredibly hyped for this because just I love these characters. And Matt Reeves as well. When they changed directors, I was really kind of iffy because it was Rupert Wyatt, I think, did Rise, wasn't it? I love what he did with it, and I was really apprehensive that with a new director on board, maybe it would completely change. As I said, I think they nailed it with Dawn, and they wanted to carry on that director with that same creative vision into the third one, and I think it's really good that they have, because 2 and 3 feel really interconnected. And even with this new one, this is going to be spoiler free, by the way, so don't worry about us giving anything away right now. We'll let you know when we get to spoilers. There are some things that do link back to Rise as well, and for example, like the opening titles in this, it makes it feel like this is a complete trilogy now. I think Matt Reeves has said that there's been ideas about maybe doing a 4th one, or possible ideas of doing other ones, but for all intents and purposes, this completes the trilogy. And as he said, it is definitely hands down one of the best trilogies that I've ever seen. Each entry has its pros, very few cons all across the board, but we'll get into it more now. So the plot for this one, for anyone who doesn't know, 2 years after the events of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Caesar and his apes have been at war against the humans. As the apes start suffering heavy losses, Caesar wrestles with his darker instincts in order to face the Colonel and the traitorous Gorilla Red. This confrontation will determine the fate of apes and humans alike and the future of Earth. So, I mean, it's a pretty standard plot for the Planet of the Apes, but what's fascinating about these films is the development and the evolution of this story. And I think you said it's arguably the greatest prequel trilogy or prequels of all time.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about the end, but one thing when the credits hit on this is I was so satisfied and like overcome by just thinking of these films. And they're like, not that I'm attached to it, but just imagine if The Hobbit had been a great trilogy. Imagine if the prequels had been a great trilogy. Like, obviously I was attached to prequels as a kid, but I guess the perk of Planet of the Apes, of just a whim very quickly, is that the original, it's so loosely done, like it's a couple of thousand years in the past, and it's very much free to explore as to how this became, rather than most prequels are certainly like 15, 20 years before. And I think that goes in its favor, but it's a very simple story. And a Planet of the Apes, how do you make 3 films about a planet becoming a Planet of the Apes? You shouldn't be allowed to make 1 good film. And we have 3 class films now. And there's a credit to a lot of people. But like to the direction change, I was worried. But then I think it was halfway through production for Dawn, they said, oh yeah, Matt Reeves is going to come back for the 3rd one. I think if I remember, they saw a rough cut of Dawn and they were so big on it that they got him straight away for war. And I think going into Dawn, that really helps. And I could see why. I mean, now he's doing Batman, and supposedly Warner Bros. Is giving him creative control. This is a guy that he can tell a film, and the way he's done these, I wouldn't say so hard. It's 2 guys who works in this trilogy, but I say it's more Matt Reeves than Wyatt. So Wyatt's Wyatt put everything in place. But to have a trilogy about an ape becoming Jesus, and I don't know. On paper it should be a joke, but this is genuinely one of the most incredible piece of storytelling I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I'm going to give, I know there's like other screenwriters involved and everything like that, but Matt Reeves, if you see this guy in interviews, he knows these characters. He knows exactly what he wants to do with them and the emotion he wants to get through. And that's what makes me really interested to see his eventual standalone Batman film, because how he talks about that character as well. I think in an interview he talked alongside the character of Caesar and compared it to Batman and how he wants to handle it. So that alone has made me really interested, because if we get onto the characters now and Caesar, what's the absolute credit to this movie is that this movie is Caesar's story. Beginning to end, this is his story. In other ones, you could argue that, yeah, he was the main character in the first one, but James Franco took a lot of screen time in that one. You could maybe argue that he was the main character. In the second one, I know, for example, you think that Koba took the spotlight in that one because they have to set up the rivalry there, and usually villains are way more interesting than good guys anyway, and Cobra was definitely a drawing force for that one. This is without a question of a doubt Caesar's story, and Andy Serkis, we talk about him all the time, we give him praise all the time, but please someone at some point give this guy an Oscar, because if he hasn't earned it by now, god damn it, I don't know when he ever will. This is without a doubt one of his best performances. We'll talk about the CGI later, but you don't see CGI in this. You see Caesar. You see these characters on screen. And it's the most emotional journey the character's ever been through. I compared it to, we talked a little bit about it before when, you saw it yesterday, I saw it earlier today. We both compared it to Logan in terms of how emotional that is and how you have this protagonist that you've followed through. We've followed Wolverine for much longer, but in terms of the actual tone of this movie and the journey that the character takes, it's very similar to that movie. And, to cap off a trilogy, I can't think of a better way to handle the character of Caesar than what was done in this movie.
No, and I think, like Wolverine, it comes down to the performance from the actor, and you cannot unsee Hugh Jackman from Wolverine. However, you can. Andy Serkis is the god of motion capture. Like I said, give him an Oscar. There's nothing he can't do. I think that's the right way of saying it. Literally, he can play a monkey, but then, he can play a monkey outstandingly. So can Tony Cavill. And I still struggle to comprehend the fact that, like, not only is motion capture such a good thing now, is that we are getting world-class performances from this. We are having, you can see the pain in his eyes and symptoms. You can see the anger and the facial expressions. This is acting. This isn't just CGI. Motion capture is just a modern costume.
Yeah.
And if you just look at his career, look what he's done. He set up Imaginarium Studios, a motion capture company. They've worked on Star Wars and other films with him. He's obviously Gollum. He's been King Kong. He's been Godzilla. He's been Caesar. He is still Snoke. And there's a reason they go to him, because he is the best at what he does.
Yeah. And
he, not only that, he is such a likable guy and he's doing the right things. It'd be so easy for him to be up himself, like, yeah, I'm the motion capture king, so what? But then go and set up a studio to help other production companies, to help other actors learn the craft and be a part of it all. I think that it's brilliant, and it's helping out the film industry as such, because these films can't be made about CGI, and as stupid as that sounds, yes, you can have your costumes, but in modern day, you cannot do costume monkeys at all. Like, people will switch off. The general public, some people will like it, like, oh, it's a throwback to the old ones, but they don't age well. Whereas this CGI, Rise is 6 years ago now. That's aged perfectly. They've just done a 4K remaster of it, which I haven't seen yet, but I can imagine that looking as good now as it does then. Whereas I can think of films from 2 years ago that have aged terribly with CGI. And an example is Transformer films. They don't age well, and that's the key to this. And they've invested the money in the right way by focusing on, I know we're talking about the trilogy more than the war, but by focusing on character and story rather than big budget explosions, they can focus their money on the right things. There's no coincidence. As each film goes on, there's more apes. It's one of those where, because that budget's got up and the technology is constantly improving, they can have more apes in a shot, and it's working wonders.
Yeah, definitely. And that brings us on to the other apes in this movie as well. So we do have returning apes with Rocket, Maurice, Luca, who's actually named in this one, I think. I don't think he was actually in Dawn, but I don't think he got a name drop in that one. And I know I can't go too much into it right now. I'm going to save it for spoilers. But what I like, again, about this is the evolution of these characters. To see Rocket, a character that we saw in the first movie who was Caesar's rival, to the point that we see him in this movie where he's best friends with him and he's selfless and he would willingly give his life for Caesar in this movie. It's a really nice progression to see. And I love all the supporting characters in this film. And that's why, I guess, would you still count this one as a summer blockbuster? Because it's coming out in summer season, and certainly from the trailers, it was definitely marketed that way. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the tone, but this stands head and shoulders above every other summer blockbuster, because while it does have moments of spectacle, not so much in this one, maybe not as much as the trailer lets on, but you still have that spectacle, but character is always at the forefront. And that's what makes this different from every other film that I've seen this summer. I may as well say this is the best film I've seen all year so far. It's an absolute masterpiece all the way through. And that's because characters put first. And And I think this is probably, I'm going to have to watch it again, but I would say this is my favorite one out of the trilogy so far, purely because of that. And it's just a really good character piece of Caesar. But all the other characters, there's no wasted character in this movie. There really, really isn't. Everything filters into the plot so well. And I would say out of all three as well, this, in terms of the other apes, this is the most screen time and interaction they've got out of all the other previous films.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to Rise, obviously the first half is the Caesar film, the other half's the Breakout, and you get to meet these guys and the journey. I mean, they make it clear now that it's been 15 years since the beginning of Rise. No, sorry, 15 years since the ending of Rise and the beginning of Now, I believe. And, you know, he's stuck with some of these guys. Morris is probably one of everyone's favorite apes. He is the wisdom of the group. Like, he's almost Caesar's advocate. That's what he feels like. He's always there. He won't speak. I mean, he can, but when he speaks, you know it's because it's important, stuff like that. And the core group of apes that have been on this journey together, it was only settling for them to finish it together. We won't go into the details of the sub-story, but we will in the spoiler section. However, we can almost call them the originals, but they've tried to do a swap of Buck for the other guy, which hasn't. I guess it's because they could Buck in Rise. Spoiler alert. But it is a character piece, and they have got the right screen time. I mean, I'm trying not to write Rocket because it goes into spoilers and Caesar, but they've had their journeys, and it does. I wouldn't say it comes to an end, but the trilogy has wrapped up now. But it was nice that we didn't just get Caesar wrapped up. We had every character introduced, not just in Rise, but in Dawn as well. The outcomes of what happened at Rise, how did that happen? How did that expand? What happened at Dawn with Cobra? How did that input this one? The three are connected as a trilogy. They don't just disappear from themselves. They are integrated, and they would be some marathon to go watch them back to back. That's going to be a fun day when that day comes. But the characters, these films are about characters. Like I said, is it summer blockbuster? No, it's a quality film. I would love to have seen this released around Christmas time. Not in the Star Wars, but just in the fact that
the Oscar.
Yeah, get that Oscar campaign, because this somehow hasn't won Best Visual Effects, and there's been two of them. And I think Interstellar beat Dawn, which even I questioned as a Christopher fanboy. And similar to Lord of the Rings, I hope that even if it's pity's sake, this film needs to go out in a bang. And I genuinely feel that they deserve a bit more than Best VFX. Not that it should be. No one deserves. You should have it for the sake of it, but I think performance-wise, like Andy Serkis, they really need to start looking into him now. If there's ever going to be a time to legitimize that, it's now, and it's with this.
Definitely agree. And it's kind of weird this year if we're comparing to Logan again. That's another film that when that came out, people are saying this might be one of the best films of the year that should have a shot at the Oscar, but it's going to be that genre thing again, because it's not some kind of biopic or, you know, true, whatever it happens to be. When it gets to Oscar season, I think this is going to get massively overlooked. It'll probably be up for all the technical stuff, sound, visuals, everything like that, which is fine. But after seeing this movie, it definitely is something special. And who knows, in a few years, if we look back at this one, maybe it will be held up as one of the greats. It'll be interesting to see how this one does actually at the box office. I hope people go and see this one. Moving on to other characters, we're introduced to a new ape character in this one, which everyone sees from the trailers. He's called Bad Ape. I'd say he's definitely the comic relief in this film. And when we get on to tone, like, this is a very bleak, depressing, dark movie all the way through. And they could very easily have stuck to that. They didn't really need a comic relief character. They do with Bad Ape. When I saw the trailers, I didn't really know what to make of him. I was like, is this going to be a good guy? Is this going to be a traitor? What's he going to be? They handle the character very well in this. I don't know if this was a studio thing saying you need a little bit of humor in there, but the humor is still very much dialed back, and it still feels in keeping with the movie. I was concerned about his character going in, and even when he appeared in the film, I was like, oh God, let's not have like an Alfred from the Hobbit trilogy. Let's not like have a Jar Jar Binks from the prequels. He isn't that. He isn't that. And there are moments where he is genuinely funny, and it does add that little bit of levity, but it doesn't detract away from the overall tone of the movie. So I was very happy with the handling of the character.
I loved Bad Ape. I was scared going into this film, mainly because there was a character called Bad Ape, and I just had spoiler warnings in my head that he was going to betray them or something. Not that he does, not that he doesn't. I'm not going to answer either of them questions because of spoilers. But he is, you're right, deep down he's comic, but I see him more that he is a character. I guess we can say it's in the synopsis that he is the first ape that isn't a part of Caesar's crew
Mhm.
that learn to speak and stuff like that. And essentially, just I wouldn't say the spoiler, do you know what I mean?
No.
But he was at a zoo, and he learned to speak, but off listening to people. And I think he had a phenomenal backstory. But with him, it's the progression of these 3 films that we now have an ape that hasn't had the Alzheimer's cure or been born into that genetics of the being intelligent. He's learned it by himself, versus Nova, the first mute human, who has been known for a long time. And it's the clashing of them that, okay, this 3rd film, this is a prequel trilogy. What happens in the original Planet of the Apes films? Well, none of the humans can speak, and all the apes can speak. And it's getting that it wasn't just Caesar's crew. It was an entire Planet of the Apes, not State of the Apes. And he is the comic relief, don't get me wrong, and he's very, I think, I don't want to say very, very funny, because I make it sound like he's trying to be like the joke character, but I guess if it is funny, it's more subtle moments, and it's the fact, because he's not part of Caesar's crew, how he interacts with them, you understand why he's interacting the way he does. And that leads to some of the funnier moments, which I adore him. And he's a very likable character, especially towards the end when he's helping out with the other people. I love him. And, I'm not saying do a bad ape trilogy, but I would love to see the origin. For those that don't know, he's in the poster wearing the blue puffer jacket. It's caused a bit of a stir on Twitter, but that's because there's a load of idiots online as usual.
I don't know if you had this as well, because you're the Harry Potter guy. I got a bit of Dobby vibes from him.
Yes. It's the bald white head as well, and the pointy ears. He looked like Dobby towards the end as well, especially poking his head out the ground. But I loved him, and he was my risk going into the film. I would say that he was my biggest risk going into this film, and he fair play to him. Another excellent character. Now, quick one. There may be one or two, but is there a terrible character in this trilogy? I mean, there's is in like a lead character. So I know we've had the humans, and I've got to talk about the humans later. But is it Jason, the one that's in Dawn? He's dry, but he's a bit bland. He's dry, but he's not a terrible written character. And I think they're more bland humans than terrible. Whereas,
like a lot of people mention Frida Pinto from the first one. Again, I didn't think she was bad. She just didn't really do much. And then you've got like the flip side where you've got the Draco Malfoy character. I forget the actor's name, who's a very one-note bad guy. Like the next door neighbor character as well in Rise. But I wouldn't go so far as to say any of them are bad.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? It's a weird one to have, isn't it? Because everyone's suited, and like you said earlier, he could have been a Jar Jar Binks, and you're right, he could have very easily gone into that and dropped down, and you lose so much quality to the film. But with his story integrated into it, it just adds to the experience more. And it was just excellent. This is gonna feel like our Spider-Man reviews. We're just gonna praise this 24/7, but it's rightfully being praised.
Yeah. And I mean, one of my other concerns from this film as well, anytime there's a kid actor in anything, I'm like, oh God, this is going to be painful. So when I saw the actress in it playing Nova, who's I guess is it a spoiler alert to say that?
No.
She's kind of like Mute from Aliens, at like the beginning of Aliens. Like she's a mute all the way through the movie, essentially. And I think this was her first role as well. When looking at the credits, I think it said, and introducing Amia Miller. I really liked her in this film. When you look at like what her character actually looks like, she kind of reminds me of the front cover of Les Mis, if anyone knows what I'm talking about. She plays the very kind of, comparing to Logan again, she reminded me of Laura, the sort of mute character, naive, kind of innocent, but with a dark past behind her, and integrating into this new dangerous world. And maybe it's with the fact that she didn't say anything, that's why she didn't have a problem, but she does have moments of genuine emotion in this film where you can't use words, you can't use dialogue, and it's all down to expressions and interaction with things, especially because she's interacting with, I know that actors would have been there for motion capture, but seeing them in suits like that must have been very difficult for like someone of her age to interact with. But I think she did it brilliantly, and her character does play a nice part in the overall theme of the story. The interaction between apes and humans, and there's some bad apes, there's some good apes, there's some humans in the middle as well. So I liked her placement in the film, and it didn't feel like it was shoehorned in. It felt cohesive to the plot.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a spoiler. She's the first mute. I think it's been known for a while, especially when she's called Nova, and so is the original mute from the originals. This film's good at Easter eggs. There'll be a video that comes on sometime, not on our channel, but someone's going to get these. And the way that Rise did their Easter eggs, they disembowel them like Marvel do, and this is going to be insane because there's so many. But I really enjoyed the character of her. This is exactly what you said. She doesn't speak, but the performance comes through the expressions and interaction. And there's a reason she's in a lot of the posters. She is a big part of this. And we'll get into it more in spoilers, but it reeks comparisons to Caesar and her, especially when you think of Caesar from Rise. I see that journey and how it's kind of involved with her as well. But she was an excellent addition to the cast. And, I said a minute ago, there's no terrible characters. One of the characters I never realized, which is the very tropey, normal, boring teenage character, was from Dawn. I think it was Jason's son. But he had some good interactions with Morris. But when this little girl steals the show, and it's believable as well. That's the other thing. It feels like it from the first moment you meet, it's the final scenes of it. The whole thing's believable, but it's not a nonsense act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing as well, if we get onto Woody Harrelson now, who's our antagonist from this movie, the antagonists in these films, they've been okay. Like Brian Cox was fine, but he was very stuck. And in the second movie, I don't even know if you could call Gary Oldman's character an antagonist. I guess he sort of filled that part for the human role, but he really didn't have as much focus as I thought he would when I saw the trailers for that film. And again, he was kind of a little bit one note. He was fine, but a little bit one note. Woody Harrelson is exceptional in this movie. This is probably one of the best roles I've ever seen him in. He appears quite late into the film. I'd say about like half hour more into the film,
it's the build-up. They build him up from the opening scene. The Colonel is on the microphone, and the Colonel is attacking him. Woody Harrelson.
That's what he's credited as well. He never gets named in the film.
Woody Harrelson. For anyone that's seen Natural Born Killers, one of the most intense, insane films I've ever seen. Woody Harrelson's famous for his sunglasses in it, and this is the cold of winter, and he is just repping those sunglasses like an absolute animal. And he is relentless. There's a reason he's a colonel. Like you see in him as the story progresses, you learn more about him and his past and his position of power, I guess you could say. But you know that this guy is going to shoot every single ape if he's got the opportunity to do so. And maybe that sounds two-dimensional, but he's so much more than that. But he's not just a dumb villain either. He's clever. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to not necessarily play the game, but Caesar was always more intelligent than the villains in the first film. Caesar was always more intelligent than Koba. He was more intelligent than Gary Oldman. In this one, you feel like Caesar's met his Joker, I guess you could say. Like, this is his equal, and he cannot cope with what he's doing to him. And that's where the story really drives ahead to a grinding, this is the final film. This is where shit's going down, because this guy is going to be the guy that does it all. And Woody Harrelson was absolutely incredible. Like, he is intense in a lot of his films, but this, like, normally you get a crack and a smile out of him. Like, he can try and do some funny lines when he's being serious, but this, like, not a single line. He is ready to go and kill you from the first minute you hear of him.
Yeah, no. And what I like in this film as well is, I mean, he gets a monologue in this film, and I'm not going to go into what his overall plan is. We'll get to that in spoilers. But when you listen to him speak, he is very convincing, and you can kind of see him as, he's doing what he thinks is in the best interest for the humans, for his people, as is Caesar for the apes. And that's what makes it interesting, because you can kind of see both sides to it. Don't get me wrong, the way that Woody Harrelson goes about things is absolutely diabolical and horrible. But in terms of his actual ideology, I did find that very fascinating when you do listen to him speak. If I'm going to compare him to any character, and this, if anyone knows the film Apocalypse Now, this might give away a little bit of the plot tied to Woody Harrelson's character. He reminded me of Colonel Kurtz a lot, which I'll elaborate more on once we get to the spoilers. There's even a direct reference to Apocalypse Now in the film with a bit of graffiti that says Ape Apocalypse Now, which I thought was a nice nod. And we were reading a little bit before as well that Matt Reeves and I guess someone who he was working with the film, maybe the scriptwriter. In preparation for the film, they just watched movies. They watched a whole bunch of movies. They watched war films. I think Empire Strikes Back was mentioned. They watched a whole lot of films. So I'm guessing Apocalypse Now was definitely one of those to give them the inspiration for this film. Which I guess brings us on to the tone for this film as well with the action. So I mentioned it a little bit before, but this is definitely, I hate like the darkest one of the, but it definitely is. It feels, like you said, it's the end of a trilogy. Things have got to come to a head. Things have got to be at their most desperate, and this movie does feel like the most desperate hour for the Apes. However, a word of caution to anyone who's still not sure about this movie. If you've watched the trailers for this film and thought that it's just going to be wall-to-wall action, it's the final one in the trilogy, it's just going to be all guns blazing, explosions between apes and humans, it really, really isn't that movie. Like Logan again, people who thought they were going to get like a Wolverine action movie and then were surprised they got a slow burn Western almost. It's kind of the case with this one. Excuse me. It's a very slow burn film. It takes its time. It does have those moments of spectacle, but it's tethered to character and building this world and fleshing it out and getting into the psychology of all these characters and between the apes and the humans. And what I like in this film as well, going off a slight tangent, I like that there's even apes working alongside the humans now, which brings a whole new faction into it as well. So be careful with that. If people are going into this expecting an all-out action movie, you might be a little bit disappointed as to what you get.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I would say the marketing hasn't been as strong for this as the previous two films, but it's built such a reputation now is that they know that it's going to be a draw regardless of what other people think. But I think a lot of common, I guess you could say general audience would associate, you know, war with it's going to be guns blazing from the first minute to the final minute. And it's not that at all. This is a character piece. Very much like Dawn. Dawn, I guess you could say, has two major set pieces, action scenes. This, you could argue, has three. And, you know, Rise has one, which is the bridge. So less is more. And it delivers with that because the final film in the series shouldn't be the all guns blazing affair. It should be, no, we're going to tie up the story arcs and we're going to do this by actually, you know, writing a script, having characters interact with one another, increase the stakes, but via them, not via on screen. Like Fast and Furious, like they're jokes, they're funny films, but you switch your head off. They're not articulated at all. Theirs is increase the stake. The stakes to them is the set pieces, whereas this, the stakes is Caesar and his tribe of apes. How can it get any worse than it was before? What could you possibly do? And in Rise, you had them obviously get clever. Dawn, you had ape versus ape. Ape must not kill ape. Whereas this is, you know, all of this war has happened because of Cobra. They made that very clear from the get-go. And humans aren't going to see it like that way. And when this wants to have its action scenes, it does them outstanding, just like the previous two films. But it's every time there's no action, every time they're speaking, you listen just that little bit more because what they've got to say is so much important. And what you said before we hit record, that Caesar speaks a lot more in this than the previous two films. It's because he needs to speak in this, which is the right thing because, you know, he has to speak. And there's interaction that there's more dialogue with it all. And I don't know if I'm going off on like a random thing here, but it is true. And no, not what's true. I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. But no, it is the tone and action. It's doing it right. It's doing what a sequel has to do. And in this instance, it's topping the previous sequel by finishing a trilogy, sticking to the trilogy's roots.
Yeah, and the action in this is still filmed absolutely incredibly. I think the shot that still sticks out in my mind, even as the trilogy is now finished, is the tank sequence from the second
Dawn.
movie, from Dawn.
The one shot.
Yeah, I think that's still probably the best filmed piece of action out of the trilogy. That's not to say the action is bad in this at all. The opening scene in this film, for example, is absolutely jaw-dropping what happens. Which isn't a spoiler, I don't think, because I think all the action scenes are shown in the trailers anyway. But it is incredible to watch. And because they are peppered in the movie at the right points, they don't overstay their welcome. They're still all grounded in character. They feel earned, and they feel like there's real stakes to what's happening, which, you know, you can't say for most summer blockbusters that come out nowadays. Let's talk about the CGI. My God. We're not quite there. But there were some shots in this that were almost photorealistic, like it's getting there. When Rise came out, I was absolutely floored by the effects in that. I thought they were incredible. Dawn came out, you could tell instantly that they'd improved. And it's exactly the same to this one as well. This is a constantly developing technology, motion capture. Who knows what it's going to look like in 10 years' time? With even if like you look back at like Gollum, for example, early 2000s to where they are now, it's absolutely just night and day. So the CGI in this, it's impeccable. Not just on the main apes, but every other ape that you see on screen. The close-up shots. There's a shot of Maurice the orangutan. And there's with Luca the gorilla as well, where it's really close up on them. And when it's close up, maybe you think that they wouldn't, you could pick out the fakeness a little bit more. It looks like they got a real ape on set, and I know they didn't. I know it is all CGI, but that's how good the effects have come on now. And this is what I mean. Like when you watch this film, you don't go, "Oh, that's a special effect. That's great special effects." You you see that character. You see Caesar. You see Rocket. You see Maurice. You see all these cast of characters interacting with these humans, and they feel like they're in camera. They feel like, well, they were because they were filmed in motion capture, but you know what I mean? You don't see the fakeness of the CGI or anything like that throughout the movie. You are just there witnessing these characters on screen.
And you're not seeing 70 apes either that look the same. There is 70 apes on the screen, but you can tell each one apart, and that's because you know that these VFX developers, I think, it's not ILM, it's Weta, I think, do the CGI for this. And, you can just picture in the studio, like, designing the utmost. I mean, yes, in the last one you had Cobra who had scars across his face and he was visually distinct, like the main ones all are. But when you're having the minor ones in the background, you can just tell from them like a normal actor. And that's how incredible this technology has become. And it is stunning. The last two films in a row, oh my God, Rise, the CGI was amazing. Dawn, it was amazing. And yes, again, there's a reason why it's amazing. And that's because they're putting the money into it, but they're constantly improving and they're really setting the landmarks. I think Jungle Book last year that came out was one of the most incredible, CGI things I've ever seen in my life. And it still is. But when you've got like 80 apes on screen interacting with like 20 humans and it's all done off a tracking shot, like that tank shot from Dawn, you can only just picture how hard it was for them to go and animate some of that to get everything spot on. But they do that. And I think, again, going back to Dawn and comparing it to this, what makes it feel more real is that you have live action sets with motion capture performances rather than green screen with apes on too.
It's all about the blend. That's what I've always said with CGI. If you can integrate it well with real sets and real props and things like that in the background, CGI just naturally looks better. I guarantee if you put these effects into like a fully green screen environment, you'd instantly be able to tell that they're a lot faker than they are in real environments. So it's all about that blend, and these films have always had a good job of that. We need to talk about the music in this one. So Michael Giacchino returns to score the film after scoring Dawn. I think it was Patrick Doyle did the music to the first one, which was a soundtrack I really liked. What's notable about this film, though, even though Giacchino's coming back to do the soundtrack after the second one, I didn't pick up on any themes that carried over from that second film. It feels like it's almost like a completely original score again, which I guess is the case for each of these films now. Now, looking back, I would like some themes that carried on from the first one, because I did really like the soundtrack to the first movie. But I don't know, maybe it's like the change of mood in each one, that it feels like a shift in music is required. I love the soundtrack to this movie. Now, I did listen to it on its own after I got back, and the impact wasn't quite there. But when you watch the movie, Giacchino knows the power of emotion with his songs. I watched Lost, the TV show. He did the music to that, some of the best music he's ever done. You can always tell a Giacchino score. And, there's some cues in that. I was listening to the end credits, for example. I could pick out some bits that he may have integrated in Rogue One. The emotional beats, they do sound and remind me a lot of Lost. But I can't remember the name of the song. I'm going to have to read through all the track listings. But there's a piano piece in this that plays every time that Nova's on screen. When Caesar's on screen, it hits those emotional moments. And I did get misty-eyed. I'm going to say I cried at the end of this movie. I'll say it. The music was really nice. And it's definitely a lot better than his Spider-Man Homecoming score.
Oh, yeah, the less about Spider-Man, the better. I think with the Planet Apes soundtracks, when you think of it, there's no themes. Think of Caesar and Rise and Dawn. There's not necessarily that theme, whereas I remember you said to me the xylophone is back, and I still want to say no, but when I rewatched Dawn the other day, the xylophone, the classic Apes, I guess, music you could say, that was on Cobra, every time Koba was going into town, look, it was the classic dun, like the really
like the
weird
marimba, wasn't it? Like, or xylophone or
yeah,
something.
it was such a cool thing. And it felt so unique, but right to this franchise and Enter Dawn, and we literally hit into Caesar with like Moses music. Like this is the sort of shit you hear at church, and that's a testament because this is certainly Giacchino's not his best score in the last week, maybe his best score since Up. And I need to re-listen to Up because obviously everyone just relies on the opening scene, but I sat there at the cinema. When you get the 20th Century Fox and you're a Star Wars fanboy, and for the first time in your life, you can unsee it being a Star Wars opening scene and an Apes one, that's when you know that the soundtrack's good. Yeah. And the key scenes, the smaller scenes, every single scene has a pull when you're watching it. And I've listened to it too at home, and it's not as powerful at home. But I'm thinking of all the visuals, and I guess with soundtracks, it's the combination of both. Like, you can listen to Zimmer on his own, you can listen to Williams on your own. But with this one, it's like you're thinking of that film immediately. There's them powerful moments, and the soundtrack is always emphasized as it should do. And I've said this many times before, but hearing this again, I feel that it's such an easy token people say of him, but I genuinely feel like he is the next John Williams. It's not like he's young, like he's almost 50, but if John Williams is getting Oscars in his 80s, nominations and stuff, like there's a long way to go. And he's one of them guys now where when he's attached to a film, I'm more intrigued with it. I was really looking forward to seeing Homecoming's Redemption could be the soundtrack, and maybe it wasn't to be, but he still composed a great theme in it. Just like Doctor Strange, there was a good theme, but like I said, he did Rogue One, and he did that in 6 weeks. It's one of the best soundtracks of the last couple of years.
Yeah. Definitely. What I like about Giacchino is, and I think we talked about like the whole xylophone or marimba thing, whatever instrument it is with Dawn. He seems to be that composer that film studios go to if they're rebooting a franchise, soft reboot, bringing something back, because he can capture that tone and style of another composer, but still make it his own and still definitely be a Giacchino score. I think he did that more so in Dawn compared to this one, but the emotion of this music hit me a lot more than Dawn. And maybe that's because this one's more of an emotional film rather than an action film like second movie was. The second one definitely had some emotion in it too, but it seemed like it was definitely geared more towards the action. We've basically said everything we can before going into spoilers, so if we just give our overall opinions on War for the Planet of the Apes, and then we'll pretty much just comb through the movie beginning to end.
This is my film of the year so far, and we're over halfway through, and I think I messaged you guys to say, this is on its own level compared to the other ones. Like, this is sitting way above on its own little cloud. Then beneath it, you've kind of got like Logan, John Wick, and Baby Driver. Beneath that, a load more. Beneath that, a load more. But I thought this was going to be a quality film, but I still didn't expect it to be this good. This surpassed high expectations. Mm-hmm. And I guess the people that watch this that know exactly what I'm like, what films I'm into, the fact I'm saying good luck Last Jedi and good luck Dunkirk to top this film, it's everything you know. But it was honestly a perfect film.
Yeah, this film was absolutely outstanding. You said it as soon as you went to see it that it was a masterpiece. I completely agree. Solid character piece. That I know I've sound like a broken record at this point, but that really is testament to the writing of this film, the direction of this film. It really is a flawless movie in my mind. I'm going to watch it a bunch of other times to see if it, my opinion of it still stays that high. But right now, this is my film of the year, unquestionably, just in terms of how wrapped up in the film I was, the emotion I took away from it, the journey that these characters went on. It's everything you want from a movie. And the fact that we're getting this kind of movie in summer season, it's really special. But yeah, as I said, be cautious if you are going and expecting an all-out action movie, because you won't get that, and you might find it a bit of a slow... It's still a great film. It's a slow burn, though, and if that's not your kind of thing, then maybe stay away from it, or still check it out and see what you think. You might like it. But that'll do it for our spoiler-free section on War for the Planet of the Apes. We are now going into spoilers. Now, I urge anyone who hasn't seen this movie, please go and see it. It's fantastic. Go and see it, then come back to our review afterwards. So you have been warned. We are going to go beginning to end on this film. Okay, so we'll kick off with the opening scene. Now, what was hilarious about this is that when I went to see it earlier today, it was actually the time I went to see it, it wasn't peak hours, so the entire cinema screen was pretty much 3/4 empty. I was sitting at the back. I had a great seat, one of the comfy chairs, one of the premier seats. And Mum came in with her kid, and she could have sat anywhere in the cinema. She sat next to me. And I was messaging you, George, and you said, like, the opening scene is probably going to scar this kid for life. And oh boy, does it. This is absolute carnage. It just throws you into this film. There are apes just getting massacred on screen. They're getting shot. They're getting just blown up. It feels like a war. And, you know, there's only really two big action beats in this movie. It opens with one of them. And it's really intense. The camera work as well. You were talking before we hit record. There's like a crane shot that sweeps over the forest, and you just see the scale of what's going on. It throws you right into it, right in the heat of the action, and that's what you need. It's a good opening scene for this film, and it sets the tone of what's to come.
Yeah, it's stunning because, like the old school classic sort of special forces thing, where this pure silence, the build up of the attack, and you think, okay, something's going to happen, like apes are on them all along. Before you get to the action, there's a brilliant moment where an ape hand comes out of the screen and touches the soldier, and like shit, like they've already got the soldier, and it's like, nope, meet Red, aka Donkey, who's like not bad ape, he's his own thing now, but jumping ahead very slightly, Caesar basically says that a lot of apes that were loyal to Cobra were scared of me, so they ran off and basically joined forces with the humans because they're scared, blah, 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 survival instinct nonsense. And that's in the first 2 minutes, and that's great because I thought the second trailer, when they revealed the sort of evil ape, I was like, have they spoiled a major twist or something? But nope, established in the opening scene. And it added so much more to it that the whole character journey of Red we'll be able to get through, but there was just that extra dynamic that you wouldn't think about having like an ape that's turned a species, but he has done, and that added so much more to the story. But the carnage of the opening scene was, you know, when you think that the apes are going to say that, nope, they're getting massacred, and then the reinforcements come in, and then the humans, like, you kind of feel sorry for them. Like, it felt like 300, but done properly, when all the arrows point the sky out, and there was just ape spears killing people left, right, and center. They were crawling into them, getting stabbed multiple times, and I think like there were like 4 survivors, and it was brutal. And that's immediately sets the tone. This is War for the Planet of the Apes. Welcome.
Yeah, and then straight after that, I think we get like an interrogation scene, don't we, where they've taken the remaining prisoners, including one of the apes, and then we get introduced to a new ape called Winter. He's the albino gorilla that I saw in the trailer, and I was like, this guy's going to be my favorite character. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I love how it immediately sets up like the relations between the apes and the humans. I think this is set 2 years after Dawn, isn't it? I think we read. And right from the off, you know that Caesar has pretty much been a fugitive. He's been constantly on the run. They've always kept moving. And we get scenes with Caesar and his family. You get Cornelia, you get their son, Bright Eyes, and you get their little son, who I think he was a baby. He was in the second one, wasn't he? Cornelius, I think.
Cornelius was just born at the start of the second one, and Bright Eyes was the whole Cobra trying to turn into the dark side, you know, the being evil ape, and yeah, little family tree.
Yeah, and as soon as you see this, you know that it's not going to last, because we're not going to have a happy family all the way through this movie. But what I like as well, I mentioned it earlier, where Red shows up and, you know, he just embraces him, like hugs, like he's got his son on one arm, he's got his best friend on another. And my mind just went back to Rise, where, you know, Rocket was the alpha male at the beginning. He was Caesar's rival. They have that altercation in the first film. They become friends, and just to see how that's developed now, and how they're best friends, they're comrades in this fight, and, you know, he will gladly sacrifice his life. That was really nice to see from this opening scene, and it's a really nice environment that we see Caesar in. I like to see Caesar as the family man. I like to see him as the leader. That's what he does best. But then that brings us on to the death of Caesar's family, which I knew was coming, and unfortunately, I really wish I hadn't have watched that final trailer, because although it was probably heavily hinted at from the synopsis anyway that something like that was going to happen, you know, the trailer just all but spelt that out for me, who was going to die, which was really annoying, because I think had I have not known that, this thing would have just been an absolute emotional gut punch. Because, yeah, Caesar's wife and son, who I thought was going to go on to have like the legacy, and if they were going to do sequels, it was going to continue on with him. Yeah, no, he's just like shot off camera pretty much. but the reaction on Caesar's face in that moment is without doubt one of the best bits of the film.
It's Blue Eyes is a character in Dawn that you don't really like. You don't like him too much, but you understand why, and that's the point. You understand why he's questioning his dad, why he's been brainwashed by Cobra, and why everything happens. Towards the end, you do like him, and in this, it's brutal. Like I said, the final trailer, you knew something bad was going to happen, but in the final trailer, they basically spoiled it, and the way they do it, like the action scene in itself, I loved it. We're talking about the guillotine soundtrack. You get this brilliant moment where the ropes come down the waterfall, and it's just a unique score. And Caesar's working by the green lasers, and we kind of get like, you know, that tunnel scene in Dark Knight Rises where when they're shooting the guns and Batman's in each corner. It felt like that, except there's giant gorillas doing it for them instead.
Reminds me of like Aliens as well, where they're stalking through the dark, kind of slimy cave walls. It's all dark with the laser sightings.
Yeah, it was great visuals, and the whole build-up is that, you know, Blue Eyes, he kills one of the guys, and they think that's that, and he hugs his mom, and then for the first time, the corner of your eye, out pops Woody Harrelson. You just see him aim the laser. Then you hear gunshots. Then you get the trailer clip where Caesar's run up, Woody Harrelson shooting at him. And then it's when he realizes that like his wife and son's dead, and although the wife's not in it much, and you know, Blue Eyes, like I said, he's had a redemption arc already, but it's that gut punch of fuck, this is Caesar's wife and kid, and the other one's gone missing still. And you know, we spent a whole film with Blue Eyes learning of him how to embrace the ape and humanity and stuff like that. And, you know, it was a sad moment, and it's the performance by Andy Serkis that builds it. You get the rage and the pure anger of flying through the waterfall trying to get to Woody Harrelson, and it's just so intense. But how do you introduce the right villain? You have him kill the wife and son of Caesar. But what it leads to is maybe one of my favorite lines of the film from Rocket, and again tying into Dawn. I've said for ages that Cobra's a looming threat over this entire film. His words are, "I know what it's like to lose a son," and you think that you do because, you know, his son, like, is it Ash? Yeah, it's Ash, isn't it?
Ash, yeah.
For those that haven't remembered, Cobra, he picks up Ash and he throws him off a giant balcony for refusing to kill someone. And that's one of the most memorable moments of Dawn of the Apes, one of the most heartbreaking moments of Dawn of the Apes. And, you know, it's about tying in that Rocket has lost his son, but he's still there with Caesar. And they need to integrate. It relates back to that previous film like a sequel should do. And for that, I give it all the credit in the world. It was just them grounded moments. And then the story is set in motion. He's on a redemption arc to go and find the Colonel and kill him.
Yeah, and I guess this is spoilers for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But Cobra is presumed dead at the end of that movie. But in the post-credit scene, you can hear like a little audio bite of like rubble shifting and grunting. And the audience is meant to take out the Cobra is still alive. He didn't die at the end. So I was expecting him to make an appearance in this movie. And I asked you before, is Cobra in this movie? And you said, kind of. And that got my interest. But I think it was really well handled. I would have liked to have seen Cobra come back, but that would have been very cliche. And I think that would have taken the focus away from what was inherently the story. What I like is that they did keep the character of Cobra in the story, in Caesar's mind. And, you know, you can tell that the events of Dawn have haunted him and continue to haunt him 2 years after the fact. And it's that constant fear that he is becoming what he fought and what he fought against in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And it's a story trope that's done a lot of times, but it really works in this movie because this moment when, I mean, Caesar has pretty much lost everything. He's lost his eldest son. He's lost his wife. Yes, he does have another son. Yes, he does have another tribe. But right now, the only thing that's on his mind is revenge. And revenge is a fuel that just drives him throughout this entire movie. All the way up until the ending. And I like that about it because Caesar's always been the level-headed one, whether he's a military tactician, whether he's just organized what the tribe is meant to do. This completely shakes him to his core to the point where he says, you know, he's going to abandon his own tribe. He's going to go on this one-man mission of revenge. And you've got his, you know, his close friends like Maurice, Rocket, try to give him counsel saying, maybe you should let this slide. Maybe you should let it go. Focus on your tribe now, we need you. And it's those constant moral decisions that Caesar is torn between, whether he is becoming Cobra, whether he does want to exact revenge, or whether he should forgive and focus on his group of apes now into future. I thought that was a fascinating way to take Caesar's character for the final film.
Yeah, and again, like I said, that character journey, that isn't that, because Dawn's about maintaining and creating the ape illusion of your own your home. But it changes everything, because you don't expect him to lose that family, and the whole Cobra stuff. Like when we spoke before, he looms over the film. It is precisely that, and later on in the film, there is the line, "You're becoming like Cobra." That's when it hits you. That's when it hits Caesar as well, and it's such an interesting dynamic to add to it, because it's so easy to go down the path of, this the war film, we're going to see him as a general killing people. No, we're going to add to that character dilemma, and we're going to change the stakes up a bit and develop that further. And I believe it was the right thing to do, and they've proved it was the right thing to do, because they didn't make a mistake in doing it, and it was outstanding.
Yeah. It reminds me of the kind of, if anyone's played the Batman Arkham games, how we get to Arkham Knight and the Joker is in Batman's mind, constantly playing with him. That film does it. That game, does it a lot more than what it does in this. This one, I think Cobra's in like 2 scenes, but as you said, that threat of him, of what Caesar could become, is always looming throughout the film. I thought that was fantastic. And we kind of see the more merciless side of Caesar come into play, where we're introduced to the character of Nova. So they go to this wooden cabin, and there's a guy outside. He's carrying firewood. And there's always these great standoffs in these films where the apes come into contact with a group of humans, and it's always like, who's going to make the first move? It's almost like a spaghetti western. Who's going to reach for the gun first? The guy says he's going to slowly put the wood on the floor. He goes to get a gun, and Caesar is just taking no prisoners in this film, just outright shoots him with a shotgun. And then once they do a sweep of the place, they find Nova. Maurice I think he taught like English. Didn't he teach English to the apes? And you could see that like teacher nurturing kind of character coming through in this film as well. He immediately takes a liking to the girl and wants to essentially adopt her and bring her with the tribe, because he sees a lot of what she is. I know it's bad ape, isn't it? But I think he sees that, she's innocent in this. She's not an enemy. She can't speak English. Let's take her in. And there's that, Caesar is against the humans now, even if they are an innocent child, where usually he probably would have been a lot more lenient. And also, it's never explicitly said, but the girl kind of looks at this dead body of this guy that Caesar shot, and we're meant to infer that maybe it was her dad or her guardian or something. It's never outright said, and I like that they didn't do that. Because there's like no remorse on her face at all. It seems like she's seen a lot of death from that one moment. And it reminded me of, have you ever seen the film The Road with Viggo Mortensen?
No, I've got it, but I haven't seen it.
Post-apocalyptic movie.
A bit like Last of Us.
Yes, sort of that post-apocalyptic, end of days. People keep dying. You keep moving from one group to another. It reminded me of a moment like that. And in terms of like a character introduction to Nova, I thought that was great. And the fact that she didn't react to her death of her dad, maybe, or a guardian, I mean, that just said 1,000 words for that character.
Yeah, and that's what I think was the main thing, because as the film later on develops, it's what I've been thinking about. You learn that Woody Harrelson's having all the mutes shot and killed. And that guy, and essentially anyone that comes into contact with Nova becomes mute. That guy was probably a mute. No, he doesn't, because he talks. Sorry, I forget that.
It's the virus is like
mutating.
They all carry the virus at some point, but it's now mutating, it's adapting, and it's making people mute and kind of go primeval.
Yeah, and that's an amazing tie back to the originals as well. That's the main thing, 'cause they are muting the originals, and you wonder how that happens. And the fact that with the mutes, Woody Harrelson kind of said later that they lose intelligence as well. I don't feel like she's lost it, but if that is her father, she's got no remorse. She walks over it, probably more of a guardian type figure. And then Morris is almost like her father figure after. Like, every boat ride, she clings to him. Not boat ride, horse ride. She's scared of Caesar, but it's the dynamic of she's scared of Caesar, who is now doing the killing. Whereas, go back to Rise of the Apes, Caesar was the child, excited about everything, scared by the bad humans. And I think as the film develops, Caesar begins to realize that she is fine, and he is seeing what he's become. And there's the beautiful scene of him in the cage where she saves and feeds him, and I think he begins to realize again that not all humans are bad. And that's a key part, going back to the roots of his character. And their scenes together are great, and it's so easy to get a character like this wrong, of the young girl, the first meet. But Nova, I think they nailed it. It was exceptional. And
I mean, I couldn't remember back to the original Planet of the Apes, but you said Nova was a character
It was just the name. It was the name of the mute girl that Charlton Heston basically chills with the whole film. But I think with these, it's all Easter eggs. The first one's littered with dozens. I remember there's some absolutely amazing ones in there. Dawn's got plenty, and this has even more. And I think it's more or less Cornelius is obviously the name of Caesar's son. It's also the name of the sort of ape doctor from the original 3 films. You've got Nova, who was the first mute in the first, who's the mute in the first 2 films. Whereas it to me, is it an Easter egg? It's not that character. That's the main thing. It is never ever these characters. To me, I personally think this is a different timeline. I know the Icarus rocket's there, but
that just was like a fun little.
Yeah, it was a little
Statue of Liberty figure as well.
Yeah,
Caesar was playing with.
They're clever Easter eggs. They're fun ones. They're not in your face ones like Marvel. And I love they're making these references. I think there was another amazing one going back to Rise where there was a name on one of the cell doors in the prison of one of the apes, and the name of that ape was originally one of the actors of the female ape from the very first film. It's the clever things like that I love, and I feel like this film does the Easter eggs, not so slight like that, but like Nova, okay, she is the first mute. The second it popped up, I was like, okay, we've got the mute guaranteed now.
Yeah.
We've got, and I thought it was awesome the way they did that. And even Bad Ape, he wears a puffer jacket. The original apes, the army ones, they don't have puffer jackets, but they've got the same colour and the same patterns and stuff. So it's little things like that, which I love them touches to get that prequel content, I guess you could say, in there.
Yeah, I've got the Planet of the Apes special edition collection up there with the original movies. I'm gonna have to go back and watch those.
Is it like an orange case that slips out with the? Yeah, I've got the same one. It's with the original Planet of the Apes. The first one's great. The other ones are terrible, but there's something about them that's just like the first one's great. Yeah.
And I know they did a TV show afterwards as well, which I've seen a couple of episodes of, but I'll definitely go back and watch that original movie. So we've talked about Bad Ape and stuff like that. So let's get to Woody Harrelson's character more and the military compound. I don't think this is out of left field to say, but I definitely did get a lot of Schindler's List vibes once we got to this location. They definitely play up the Holocaust imagery with this one. And, you know, a lot of other films have done that before. You get to like... Terminator Salvation, for example, that tries to do that. And it never really felt earned. It just felt shoehorned in to get that kind of reaction. This one, no, it's completely earned because you know that these humans that were introduced, Woody Harrelson's, they've defected essentially from the other humans. They're a lot more extreme in their measures. With this virus that's going around and mutating and making people mute, Woody Harrelson wants to keep everyone pure, essentially, and inherently human. So he is killing anyone that goes down with this virus and becomes a mute, including his own son. And I compared him to Colonel Kurtz earlier. If I'm going to give another comparison, I definitely got a lot of Colonel William Stryker from X-Men 2.
Yeah.
With, is it Jason Stryker, where, you know, he took a power drill to his head. Oh, that was the wife, wasn't it? But basically he's like, he messed up his own son's life, essentially, because he's just completely deranged and crazy. But I mean, it's a great performance, and I do like that imagery because, like, all these apes are having to work. They're having to build a wall. You can bring any current political situations into that if you like, but no, it felt complete. And this is what felt absolutely like dire straits for these apes in this movie. And you did want to see them succeed. And there's elements in there too of like the Great Escape and maybe Shawshank Redemption. There's like the whole prison escape thing, but the whole prison environment for the third and hopefully final entry in this series, I thought was a really good way to show that how, you know, dire the situation is for the apes in this film.
Yeah, and the way I saw it, it doesn't just show how dire the situation is. It goes back to the not just Rise, but Apes in Cages. It's coming back to not necessarily haunt them, but it's that same situation, different scenario. But this time, it's so much worse. They're not getting fed, they're not getting drinks, they're being slaved away. What I did think with the bomb, Planet of the Apes 2, spoiler alert, a bomb goes off there and it kills them all, which is stupid. In Planet of the Apes 2, the bomb was always there. It's like a nuclear bomb, and the city's been built nearish / on top of it or something. So when the bomb was in this, obviously because I can't remember 2 that well, I was there like, wait, is this the bomb that they build the city around or something like that? I don't know, but clearly not. But I thought that could have been like, you know, their Easter eggs were good, but yeah, it was brutal seeing them enslaved. Like we said before we record, there's like Pirates of the Caribbean vibes of them whipping them. We've got Red, who's basically like, I guess you could say he's like the bear Drew, but like for hitting apes with and shit from Inglourious Basterds. Like he just beats their shit into these people, and it's brutal seeing them. You can see them starving, them suffering, and you're like, okay, how are they going to get out of this situation? Especially with Woody Harrelson, who's got his eye on Caesar 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, Woody Harrelson in this, I can't remember the name of his character, but Ralph Fiennes from Schindler's List, how he just will walk through the compound casually and just headshot people left, right, and center. So this poor orangutan gets whipped, and you think that he's going to be set free, or well, he's going to be put back in the cage, and he'll just have no qualm to just put a bullet in his head. I was actually really surprised to see how extreme they could push the violence. And I know that there's CGI characters, so you kind of have a little bit of a disconnect with that. But you know, I mean, the tone for this is the bleakest one out of the three. And as I said, like that kid was sat next to me. I was surprised that she didn't like cry or anything through this movie. Would this be a film that kids could see? I guess so, because one did, but I don't know. The tone of this movie felt a lot more adult than the previous two to me. But that's cool. I like that they did that and they weren't afraid to go those places.
Yeah, they don't want to treat it as a dumb blockbuster film. It's not the Marvel film where you've watched 5 before and you get the indie message. It's not funny comedy trying to make the best out of an average situation. This is war. This is, you know, it's not that kind of war has real lives. It's not that type of film, but the stakes are high and they're showing you the stakes with these moments. And it's brutal and it makes you really fear for these characters.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about pretty much everything, like the prison escape and things like that. But one scene that did really interest me, and we kind of had the same thought on this, we were a bit confused by it, but Woody Harrelson's character's death in this film. Caesar, before, like, he has the perfect opportunity to escape with all the other apes, but he doesn't. He's consumed by this quest of vengeance. He wants to kill the Colonel character in this. So he goes there. And we go into the room and we see like empty alcohol bottles just everywhere. And there's a picture of his son. And, you know, it's never said, but that image right there says everything you need to. Like, you can tell that even though he killed his own son, and earlier in the monologue, he plays it up like it was the right thing to do. I forgot the term he says, but he says he basically felt reborn. He felt like he had a new found.
It's like a cleansing type thing, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah. But you can tell that although he tries to hide it, no matter how, like, you know, he still did take the life of his own son, and this thing has played on his mind constantly, down to the fact that he still has a picture of his son, and he hasn't even got rid of that. It's a constant reminder. Now, I thought he'd just sort of, you know, the army's here to come and apprehend him, to level the base to the ground, kill everyone in there. It's like the Pirates of the Caribbean thing. Like, it's all good business. Like, he was out of orders. He didn't know what to do. He was just giving up. And he has like this slurred speech, and I thought that he was just blind drunk. But in those moments, you realize that no, the virus has hit him too. The same virus that, you know, affected his son, which proceeded for him to take the life of his own son, has now hit him. And he's just willing for Caesar to shoot him. And that was a really tense scene as well. Not knowing whether Caesar would give in to his mate and pull the trigger, or whether Woody Harrelson would be just left there to his own devices, or whether he would take his own life, which eventually, of course, he did. But no, the pace and like the tension that was created in that scene was absolutely palpable.
It was one of them. It's not as like poetry, but it's the whole, you know, you've become everything you didn't want to be. You're about cleansing, leading all these humans that can talk, and the mutations hit you, not the others.
Poetic justice, like, you know.
Yeah, precisely. And it was one of them. I think this is when the score really kicks in. This is when the facial expressions on Caesar. He really wants to kill him, but he just won't. He you can see how much he's trying to do it, but he just will not pull that trigger, and it's so tense. And then it's the groaning of Woody Harrelson, because like I thought it'd be like an Iron Man 3, just that he's an alky on the floor or something like that, but you realize like shit, like he's become a mute, and it is intense. And when he reaches for the gun, and you know, he leaves it for him, and obviously he shoots himself in the head, so he's still, I guess, like the classic sort of villain, he follows through with his orders. He will kill himself because he'd rather die than become one like them. And it is one of the most powerful things. And the way you think he's been such a bastard villain, like, you really want Caesar to kill him, and that's the point. you want him to go out in some horrible, like Cobra. I mean, he fell on a bridge and got like smacked by a giant metal rod and fell down in the tower that was on fire. You had David Lloyd from the first one that was in the helicopter that obviously Cobra kicks into the river, and this was nope, he's in the tower in his room, he's just going to shoot himself in the head, and there was something about that which worked so well, because you're sitting there thinking of the whole film, how the hell is this guy going to die? Like, is he going to get like stabbed in the back and pushed off his balcony? Nope, straight up old school, just shot in bed. And
yeah, it's like a really, when you see him in the bed just like murmuring, it's a really pitiful image, isn't it? From the same guy who walks out every morning onto the balcony to address his people to the American national anthem and a chanting army in front of him and shaving his head in front of people, to see him reduced to the image that he is at the end of the film.
It's a powerful scene, and I think this is all about most of the film. And it's just not, I hate the phrase he got what he deserved, but like you said, poetic justice.
It felt earned, yeah.
And it makes him more memorable as a villain, I think, as well, to go out in a non-villain way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, any other film would have had him like be present in the final battle, leading everyone. This one dispatches with him, gets on with the end battle without him. And another powerful scene as well. There's loads of little powerful scenes throughout this entire film. Not bad ape, but the Red, the gorilla. All the way through, you can see that turmoil in his mind. Like every time he talks to Caesar, Caesar says like, you know, you're an ape, you're not a donkey. These humans are calling you donkey. You're their slave, essentially. And you can see like he's coming around, but not quite, not just yet. And it's in the moment where Caesar is hit with a crossbow bolt. He's about to be killed. And Red makes the choice. Does he either fight with the humans still, or does he save Caesar's life? He does save Caesar's life, and he's immediately headshotted. But that, again, redemption for that character. Every character has an arc in this film, and it's paid off in some way. And we knew that he was going to have that redemption at some point in the film, but it was nice to see in that moment. And it was a genuinely like great action climax to that scene as well, with Caesar Blake. What was it, like an oil tanker or something that took out the entire
it was like the bomb that took out the whole place. And
yeah,
what I loved with the Red scene is you can tell that he doesn't believe in Caesar until he sees him running into that limelight, that he is going to come and he's going to save the day. And what I loved as well is that the guy that's pointing the crossbow at Caesar, he is the character in the first scene that Caesar saves. Caesar gives him the message. Caesar has mercy on him.
And he becomes the new commander, doesn't he? He says, like, the colonel says you have command, and essentially at the end he does.
And he's going to kill Caesar. That's the other thing. There's no equal of the, you know, there's a brilliant speech Caesar has before, is that you say, I have no mercy. I returned all of your men. You come here and you kill my family, you know, mercy, blah, blah, blah. And you can see that this next guy, he doesn't have mercy over. He is about to kill Caesar. And the way he dies, I'm genuinely struggling to think of, like, is one of them like classic film deaths that people will talk about for years to come. And he gets shot by a grenade, like, not a grenade, sorry, a grenade launcher. Mm-hmm. And he completely blows up, and they show it with super slow-mo.
The helmet, isn't it?
Yeah, and it kind of makes you jump as well, because you know something's going to happen, but you didn't expect a grenade launcher to go off. You thought something else, and it was brutal. And then it was the great redemption for Red. He, you know, puts his gun to the floor, knowing he's about to get headshotted, and it's that moment with him and Caesar, that, you know, that final connection. It tied up some of the Cobra stuff as well, with him being a loyalist soldier. But again, another fantastic scene, and there's an array of them. Every scene is great in this film. Mm. I cannot think of a single bad moment from this film.
Same. And I guess we should talk about the ending now, right? So there's an avalanche sequence that happens that was sort of like capped off the big action climax. Very tense moment again. Didn't know if Caesar was going to make it out of that, if that was going to be his end or the ape's end, whatever. But they all climbed to the tops of the trees, and I think that kind of mirrors the shot from the end of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think that ended with them all in trees looking out across the redwoods. So that was a nice callback to that. But the death of Caesar. I guess I should have predicted it, because I did listen to the end titles track on the soundtrack before seeing the movie, realized that it was a very emotional and sad piece of music, so I expected it to end on some kind of tone like that. So when he got hit by the bolt, I kept thinking as I was watching the movie, like, they're going to have to come back to that at some point. Like, he can't just shrug that off. That seemed like it was a pretty fatal wound. But then we get like a travel montage of, you know, going on their journey, and they include the desert, by the way, which we talked about, links into the original Planet of the Apes again. And, you know, they still haven't bought this bolt thing up. Everyone's happy. They're all frolicking in the reservoir, and Maurice kind of just sits, chills next to Caesar. And then Caesar slumps a little bit, and I was like, oh, no, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. And I was bawling my eyes out at the end of this movie. And that's just testament to this trilogy, testament to this film, and testament to Andy Serkis as an actor to make me feel those emotions in that moment. It was the perfect end for the character because there's no regrets in his mind. You know, he got his people to safety. He did what he set out to do. He was a great leader. He's got them all to safety. And he dies essentially next to his best friend, who tells him that he will be remembered and his son will continue his legacy.
It's one of, well, it is the powerful scene in the film. Even thinking about it's getting me going.
Yeah.
And before then, with the travel scene, I remember, I think I said to you before we record that, one of the first scenes of the series, we found a desert. I made nothing of it. I was like, okay, it's another home. And it's only when you get to that final scene, you're like, shit, this is Planet of the Apes. Like, this prequel trilogy, it's reached its end. I thought it'd finish with them standing on the snow, like, yes, we've won.
Yeah.
And, you know, a bit like Rise, they finished in the woods, Dawn finished in a bridge. But this, no, we've got the camp, we've got the new home, we've got the reservoir scene in the original, and it's all tied up. And then there is Caesar, and it is when I think he shows the blood as well to Morris, and you know, I think
and
Morris
he kind of stops him, doesn't he? Like,
yeah, he's like, don't tell them, don't try and help me. And it's that moment, right? You know, I kind of see that Morris is like his advisor, he's the wisdom, and those two in the cages together being the first two clever apes. It's powerful, and I think I don't know if we were on live in this or we're not, but I didn't cry, but I kind of did. I was quite emotional in this scene because you know it's coming. And it felt like the Han Solo death, where everyone knows, like I said this many times, I bawled like a little kid. That's a character I grew up with from the age of like 3 till I was, how old was that film come out? 1920? And yet you've got Caesar, who's been on my screen for 5 years in 3 films. And there's such an attachment to it. And the fact it's a CGI monkey, and that's how good the performance is, that's how good the technology is, that's how good these films are. You care for it. And it was just a perfect moment. It would have been too easy for him to go out in a fight. It would have been too easy for him to sacrifice himself. But the whole religious angle of Moses, you know, he reached the promised land. He got his tribe there. And he might not have been there to witness it, but, you know, he said, you know, make sure, tell my son and all that kind of thing. It was a very powerful moment. And I think this is kind of stupid, but the best thing about it, he didn't just die sitting there. He collapses, and you've got Morris in tears, which was quite a powerful thing because you've never really seen him do anything like that. He's always got wisdom, but even he doesn't really know what to do. And then, you know, one of the final shots is Morris making the ape noises to get all their attention, and you can just see that they've all just seen Caesar die as well, the rest of them. And then you've got your credits, and it's such a way for this film to go out. But it's earned because this is Caesar's trilogy. As much as this is apparently its prequel, this is all about Caesar. And we've seen him from a baby in a lab to, you know, a guy taking over, an ape taking over some woods, to an ape having his killing of rape because in one for an ape leading a war, to now taking the tribe, finishing the war, and doing all of that. It's such a brilliant journey and a testament to this trilogy. And I think that's what hit me. It didn't just hit me because he died and he was such an amazing protagonist. It hit me as well because it was the end of this trilogy. Yeah. And the way it's gone out, it was the perfect way for the film to go out. Yeah. And the soundtrack as well.
Yeah. I mean, he dies with a smile on his face, doesn't he? In that moment, it's like, again, going back, this is the comparison I wanted to make at the beginning with Logan, but knew that if I mentioned Logan, that would be a spoiling of itself. He's found peace at the end, and he's finally found rest. He's gone through all this turmoil, all this heartache and everything along the way. He's finally did what he set out to do. His story arc is complete. His journey's complete. He's got nothing else to give, and then he can finally rest. And it was the perfect end. And we've talked about, I mean, after the film finished, we were discussing ideas of if they did a 4th one, what could they do next? Would they do a new trilogy? Would they do it from Cornelius' standpoint? Now he's older, try to, you know, step into the shoes, the role model of his father. There's lots of avenues that can go down. And I think Matt Reeves has spoke out before as well, saying that he doesn't want to do a direct remake of Planet of the Apes just yet. He says that's still the end goal. That's where they're getting to, but there's still much more of the journey they can tell up into the leading point, up until that point. Like with 3, every film that they make, it's getting that little bit closer, but it's not going to take that massive leap to get there.
I think with that now.
Me too. And let's be honest, if they did a fourth one, I know it's going to be really good. Well, maybe if Matt Reeves comes on board, or we've even talked if Andy Serkis takes on the directing of the next film, but it's not going to top this one. It's not going to top Caesar's Journey. And I think that how the opening title cued this up, where it has like Rise, Come Up, Dawn, and War, they want this to be a self-contained trilogy. Would I be opposed to a fourth one if they had the right idea for it, if it was an inspired idea, if it was a good continuation of this franchise, if it was generational, then maybe. Would I be opposed to them if they just kept it as a trilogy? No, I think they should. But it all depends if this movie is going to make money, I guess. And if it makes a lot of money, then I'm sure we're going to get a sequel at some point. And even if we do get a sequel, I want it to be like years down the road. Like, give this one time to breathe, let this one settle. And then in like 5 or so years, you can make another one.
My opinion of it is I don't want another one. And I know I'm someone that said this had 4. I would normally, for things like this, I'd be excited. Oh, another one, thank God. But this is like, this has always been a trilogy to me. I think they've said that from day one. This is a trilogy prequel series. Mm-hmm. And I've been so ready for that third film to tie up. I did not, like I said, I didn't expect it to end with the desert. And now it has. To me, it's done. What is there left to show? The only thing left is for them to chuck a human in a cage and for them to build something which no one wants to see, in all honesty. Mm-hmm. And whether they want to try something, that's fine. But I am... I stand completely against the idea. But when I said, it would have to be Matt Reeves or Andy Serkis. And Matt Reeves, he's going to do a Batman trilogy, you can say at least like 4 or 5 years away. Andy Serkis is someone that, I would love to see him direct, maybe controversial, a remake of the original via the point of view of the Apes. Because we've now at a stage, this is the Transformers to it. I've waited all night to say this. You hate the humans in Transformers because the film focuses on them. Whereas me, because again, this is going to be different, I don't really care for that. But if I saw another Apes film now where it focuses on the humans, not the apes, I think I'd be a bit triggered.
Yeah.
Now I've seen everything in place for the Apes point of view. If you want it, I'm not saying remake the original like shot for shot, but if you had that astronaut come to the planet of the apes, it would be incredible to see it from the apes point of view, how to hear the human talk for the very first time, things like that. But I don't want to see that. But if they did, it would have to be something like that. I don't want it to be Cornelius' son. I don't want it to be 50 years in the future. You either hit that original planet of the apes, or to me, don't do it. Personally, I'd like them to finish this. I'd like to Matt Reeves go and make some amazing Batman films. I'd like Andy Serkis to appear as Batman films and go. I mean, he's doing a directing career now. He's got a film out being tipped for awards next season. Go do that. Please, guys, do what you want to do. But Apes, this has been, like I said, one of the best trilogies of my lifetime so far. And I'm going to struggle to think of trilogies that come down better than this. Yes, we're going to have the Star Wars ones, and there's always going to be shit like that I think of. But to get grips on something else, I don't think I'll ever see something like this again, because this is a trilogy that should have failed on the first film and has ended up being what it is now. And it's perfect. And I guess very quickly, I kind of mentioned to this you the other day on the chat. I said, I want to get a video out on us talking greatest film trilogies, because this is really here now. And it would be such an interesting discussion if we can get everyone on for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, up for that. And, a lot of people, when they think of trilogies, they always think, oh, the third one drops the ball. But if you think about it, there are some great trilogies out there, and this is absolutely one of them now. I've said it, this is my film of the year so far. I know we've got Dunkirk coming out. I know we've got Blade Runner and stuff like that. There's a lot of interesting films still yet to come out. But this is definitely a cut above the rest, and this has set the stage now for films to come this year. So that'll do it for our review on War for the Planet of the Apes. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. If you've seen it in the UK, I think it still has yet to come out in the US. I think it's coming out towards the end of this week. Which one's your favourite in the trilogy? Anything about the original Planet of the Apes films, anything Planet of the Apes related, please do let us know. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, I am getting back into reaction videos tomorrow. I was waiting for my voice to settle. It's not 100%, but it's kind of there now. So there'll be a reaction video for the Dark Tower official trailer 2. Tomorrow night, we'll also be going live for another news show. A lot to discuss in that. That's going to be really fun. Friday, there's a new film club episode with me and Tate. And on the weekend, we haven't got a date confirmed yet, but we will have a review for Cars 3. A lot of movies out this week, so there's a bunch of stuff coming to the channel. George, you also took a Star Wars pilgrimage to Skellig Michael.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about your video with that?
As I've said apparently many times before, according to some people, I've told everyone it was my birthday last week. It's not even coming up anymore. So I went to Skellig Michael. For those that don't know what that is, it's Luke's Island from the end of episode 7 from episode 8. I went on a pilgrimage, and it was a ballsy pilgrimage because if the weather's bad, you don't go on it. So I uploaded a video to the channel. It's basically me talking about the trip. It's got a lot of GoPro footage, a shitload of pictures off my cameras, off my phone. So go check that out. What I will say, I've had a copyright issue at the minute from Lucasfilm because I decided to stick in the step song because why the hell wouldn't I? So at the minute, it's only working on desktop. It should be fine by tomorrow, back to normal on the rest of the normal stuff. So check that out. I talk a lot about it. It was fucking amazing. Have a look at the pictures on there. But no, it was nice. That's why there's no Rockathon for anyone that cared about that. I didn't make the wrong choice by doing them either. But yeah, we've got lots. We've got news tomorrow. We'll be talking Bond, talking to Christopher Nolan. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. And then next week, we have Dunkirk, which I'm not on the Cars 3 review, by the way, people. I'm watching cars in real life at the Formula 1 track. So you won't see me on that. I'm going to try and make it to the news tomorrow night. However, if the worst comes to the worst, I will be sending a sketch over like last week, but I should be good to go. We've got a lot of stuff. I say it every time now. Yeah. There's just too much stuff coming for me to remember what I've got to say is coming up.
I was like, we'll still get your thoughts on Dunkirk. We'll probably jump on a second video because you're the Nolan guy on the channel. Absolutely. So, yeah, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. That'll do it for our video tonight, guys. Thank you for everyone that joined the stream. Thank you for everyone that commented. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.